What are the most important decisions to make when creating a new landing page? What's an easy way to improve your existing landing page? And what's the secret to killer landing page headlines and calls to action? You're about to find out. Welcome to the Clients from Content podcast. Today is actually going to be a flip the script episode where I brought in an expert that I want to learn from, and I'll ask him the three questions as opposed to someone coming on and asking me the three questions. My guest today is Blake Emal. Blake helps startups and agencies convert more from their content. He's the founder of pagetear.com, which is just like Design Joy, but for conversion copywriting. He was employee number one and CMO at Copy AI and led content at Riverside. You can connect with him on X at Hey Blake, where he has over 90,000 followers, on LinkedIn, where he has over 25,000 followers, and on his email list, where he has over 5,000 subscribers. Blake, it's awesome to have you on. The only times I do these sort of flip the script episodes is when I'm like, that's a person who knows more about that thing than I do. And I need to have him come on and teach me and my listeners some stuff. So I know you are a big time landing page expert. So I am excited to get as much knowledge out of you as I can today. So thanks for being here.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm excited to dive into whatever is going to be helpful.
Let's get right into it. The first question I have for you is, let's do kind of a hypothetical here. Let's say that someone is launching a new product or offer and they need to create a landing page from scratch. So they know what the product is, they know what the offer is, they don't have anything. They got to create a page to drive people to. When they're trying to do that, what would you say are the 3 to 5 most important decisions they need to make? And then how would you help them think through and make those decisions?
Let's dive into it. There's so many areas you could dive into, and I could just say, get your headline right, and that would be good advice. I'm going to try to give you stuff that is on the border of what you know and what you don't know. What I would start with here is zeroing in on your conversion context leading into a page. So if you consider your homepage or any landing page, whether you're flowing ads into it, content, or traffic's just coming in from word of mouth, however you're getting your traffic, consider the stage of the person that you actually want to buy your product or service. Where are they realistically at with understanding the problem that you have? So this is the classic awareness pyramid type stuff. But are you trying to sell to someone who knows that they have this exact problem you solve? Or are you trying to send traffic to somebody that or trying to convert them that maybe they have no clue at all that this problem even exists? They just randomly landed on your page. Are you trying to sell to somebody that knows you very well and they know the solution? Those are all very different entry points. And it completely changes your page structure depending on what kind of person you are targeting. So obviously, you could pull any of those people in, and you will. Nobody is the same. Everybody's got a different kind of customer journey. So you will pull these different kind of archetypes in. But who's the one that you want to actually sell to? And what are they most likely to be aligned with in terms of their level of awareness? For example, if they know that they have a specific problem and they're coming to different sites to figure out how you solve it differently, then you have to showcase like right away, here's how we're different. You don't have to lead up with as much education. When I was at Copy AI, that was early days of like generative AI and copywriting with AI, 2020. So, there was a lot of actual lead up education that needed to go into that landing page. And even before that, to get people ready to buy. So our landing page had to be a little bit more educational about the pain point and poking at that pain and helping them understand the problem before we just drove them into the solution. And then as time advances, that audience doesn't need that as much. And so you can change your landing page to dive straight into the differentiation. The way that I would think about how to actually make this decision is just look at, on average, how your best customers found you. Do interviews with them, actually talk to them, and figure this out specifically. How did they find you and where were they at when they landed on your page? If you can average that out over a decent enough sample size, even if you can only talk to 10 people or so, but get some kind of idea, that will give you an idea of, okay, they were searching for this specific thing, let's say best, whatever your category is, and they landed on you. They already knew they had a problem. If that's your average user that buys from you, you know exactly where to start your page. If they have no context on you, then you have to lead maybe 60% of your entire page has to just be straight up education about the problem. So that'll totally shift your conversion context. So that's one thing. I don't know if you want to dive into anything within that or you want me to just keep going.
Yeah, let's quickly dive into something in that. So I'm sure there are people that are listening to this, watching this, and they go, okay, that makes total sense, but I'm not sure how much my audience knows. And
Yeah.
so it's easy for us to say, go talk to them, go interview them. And by the way, people should. I'm all for that. What should they ask them? Let's say they do go talk to 10 of their people and they're trying to get a sense of what level of awareness those people have. Any recommendations for even in those conversations, how they should go about figuring that out?
First off, the quicker that you can talk to them, the better, because people will forget this stuff. Like they're not going to remember the first time they landed on your site for very long. If they convert and you're able to set up either an async mechanism in your onboarding or a phone call personally, if you're just getting started off, if you talk to them quick, that's half the battle because they'll actually remember this stuff. But really what you want to do is just ask questions like, hey, do you remember the first time that you heard about us? Why did you decide to take that to any kind of next step? And was that next step to visit the site? Was it to just sit on it until the name came up again and then finally you did? Just ask about that initial first step to getting toward the site. And then you can kind of screen share if you want to make it more visual and go through the site with them a little bit. Do you remember this? What was it here that was confusing to you? What was it that was good enough that it pushed you through? What were you looking for? Really basic questions that you don't have to reinvent the wheel on this, but what you're really looking for is, how much did you understand at this point? And if on average, you're getting the sense that, oh, almost nobody understood very much about the product or the solution coming into it, then your hypothesis of having a ton of educational lead up front is correct. Honestly, you'll only get to a point, if you're able to do this, it's because your landing page did well.
Right. I was gonna say, is there a danger if you're only talking to the buyers that you're talking to the 5% of people who bought as opposed to the 95% of people? Could you wind up getting a misleading amount of, it's working with the people that have a certain level of awareness, but the majority of people don't have that awareness. How do you recognize that?
Yeah. And just if you're posting on social and you want to know if something does well, you get votes of confidence through engagement. Look at your metrics on a landing page. Does it have a high bounce rate? If it does, look at your approach. You might need to flip it. You might need more or less educational content up top. And really, that's the biggest lever you can pull. I guess if you're just looking at a high level, is should I way more educational content or should I just dive right into what makes me awesome? Those are the two levers you can think of for this. But your metrics will tell you if your page is not doing a good enough job. For the Copy AI page, we got to a point where our CTA was to start a free trial and we de-risked that with different copy, like no credit card required, things like that. We got up to 40-45% conversion rate on that action, which is awesome. Before that, we had to test a lot to get to that point. So if you're way below that on a similar CTA, then you probably want to look at trying different kinds of copy up top. In particular, the copy is going to matter a lot more than the actual design and structure, especially up front.
Okay. So that's one decision. Let's get into another one. What's another decision people need to make?
Yeah, let's zip this one a little bit. So positioning is another one. So some questions you're going to want to ask yourself, the very baseline question to ask yourself, what does my ideal customer have to believe in order to buy from me? What has to be true for them that they will trust me enough to give me their dollars? And so that'll give you a lot of different answers and just write them down. Do this as an exercise. If it's 45 things, it's okay. Write them all down. They need to know that I solved this particular thing with this feature. They need to know that I don't require a credit card up front. They need to know that I have testimonials of people just like them. There could be a lot of things that you want there. Set that baseline of what has to be true for them to buy from you. And then you can parse out, all right, then I have to display X amount of things on the website in some shape or form. It doesn't all have to be in the hero section, but that gives you a good idea of what should actually be on the page and how you should position toward these people. And then secondly, once you have a better baseline of what has to be true in order for people to buy, you can take that a step further and say, okay, I've got that initial layer is totally covered. People will buy from me. Now, if I want to take my business to another level in terms of my positioning, how am I actually different than anything else? Because if you look around at your competitors, every other competitor that's actually working has asked themselves that first question, and they have done a good job of communicating that on the website. They also all have their own positioning and their own, hopefully, if they're successful, they all have their own take on the industry or the product or how they solve the problem, the job to be done. What's yours? That's the next filter that allows people to actually resonate with what you're saying. If you say the exact same thing as another competitor, then you start getting into price-based decisions. If you're able to differentiate, all things being equal and everybody can solve the problem, if you're differentiated in some other way and you have unique positioning, then that leads to value-based decisions. And we both know that if somebody buys you based on price, not only will they probably cancel eventually, probably soon, they'll be a worse customer along the way. Whereas if they buy based on value, they will not, they'll pay you more upfront because they aren't worried about price. They just believe you'll give them an outcome. And so you can charge more, but you can also have a much better relationship and deliver more because they will make your life so much easier as a customer. So this really helps you as it trickles down into beyond the landing page and actually into the product and the business side of it. The positioning is so important to get the right customers in the door.
So there's a couple of things you said there that I think are subtle but super important, and I just want to highlight them as well. So one is, I love the way you talked about what has to be true for them to buy. And I think the focus on, you're looking at it from the potential buyer's perspective versus I think a trap people fall into, which is, what do I want to tell people? I want to tell people about this thing and that thing. And again, it's very subtle because there's overlap and a lot of those things are the same. But I think it's important for people to understand that, like, you're coming at the perspective of what do they need to hear, what it needs to be true for them. You're looking at it from that perspective versus just, oh, here's what I think is the most exciting thing about my product or whatever. And that's true with all marketing, not just landing pages and all content for that matter. I'm a big believer that you should always be coming from, what do they want to know? What do they value? What are they looking to hear? Again, a subtle thing, but I think a really important thing to point out there. So let's go into one more decision maybe.
Yeah, I've got a bunch written down actually.
Yeah, go ahead. As many as you want to share. Go ahead.
One last thing on the positioning. So many landing pages are and you're like trying to read it thinking, how am I supposed to resonate with this? Not that everything has to be in your perspective. It doesn't always have to be like that. But if you make the products about what we accomplish as the company, how are we going to resonate with somebody as opposed to flipping that and saying, this is what you get, and put them in that transformation. We're going from A to B. That's much more compelling. And then with positioning, you'll end up, if you do it right, with some kind of formula like, I help X group of specific people accomplish Y specific outcome using Z specific method. Don't overthink it. That's easy formula. Just use that and you'll have a really good basis for your positioning where you can be differentiated. Let's dive into one more at the very least, then we'll see where we're on with time. And
I'm fine with time. So you give as many as you want to give. Fire away.
Yeah. I want to talk about social proof for a second here as proof strategy. I think we have gotten to a point where 5 years ago, people were not using nearly enough social proof. And we were wondering, why don't people trust me? Why don't they buy from me? It's because they had no clue if they could actually trust you. You'd never shown any results before. Now I think we've over-indexed on this. And no matter what kind of business it is, B2B, e-com, agency, whatever, everybody just has every form of social proof. And there's so much of it on these sites and it's all in the exact same places every time. People almost don't trust it anymore. Or if they do, they just literally look past it and don't care. And I think a big reason for this is we forgot why social proof matters. It's very contextual to each thing. So like a B2B SaaS company, it's so much more about consumption. It's not about conversion with B2B SaaS a lot of the time, especially enterprise. They are landing on these landing pages to read every line, which is very uncommon. Most of the time that people do not read line by line on a landing page, but with B2B SaaS, they do because they have to compare like 10 different companies and they have to go through this huge process. So they consume everything and then they make a decision 6-8 months later. So what they want to know is case studies and ROI numbers and like white papers and one sheets. Whereas with e-com, they don't care about that. If you're selling a fidget spinner, they don't want to see case studies. Nobody cares about that. They just want to see good reviews that look like they're real. And oftentimes they don't want to see 5-star reviews. They want to see 4.8-star reviews, right? It's just a little bit more human. Like service providers, people want to see before and after. Like what did it look like before? What does it look like after being done? And what were the results attached? So it's all different kinds of social proof that you're showing that are contextual to that kind of audience or that offering. But now we're just like, oh, here's everything. I'm a service provider, but here's somehow 5-star reviews, even though do people really review agencies like that except on certain websites? Here's a million case studies and ROI and numbers and results and customer testimonials, whatever. And it's all there all the time. Be a little bit more intentional about what proof your audience actually cares about. But then once you figure out what that is, don't just limit it to one section of the site. Don't just have like logos in the hero and then some quotes at the bottom. That's not enough anymore. Instead, take the copy within that proof, that social proof that you have that's contextual to your offer and sprinkle it throughout the sections. So in my features section, why would I not include a customer quote about that specific feature? That's way more convincing than if I just have a subheader about the feature itself and that's it. So there's a lot more contextual way that you can add social proof, but don't just do everything. Do the one thing that's needed and then find a way to sprinkle that throughout the page and use your customers' words. It's just so much better and it's actually believable and it will build trust.
Yeah, I love that advice. And it's funny because as you were saying it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's what I tell people all the time. I'll give a relevant testimonial here for this section and that section and whatever. And then as I'm doing that, we're going to review my sales page in a minute. And I'm like, I don't do that on my page. So I should listen to my own advice and Blake's advice at some point. Okay. Any other decisions people should think about before we move on?
Yeah, let me skip a couple. So I want to talk about urgency, not necessarily fake counters or I have 2 spots open for my agency. Like that stuff can work if it's true, but I'm more so talking about strategically on the page. What indications am I giving them that they should act now instead of later? Don't be dishonest. That's not what I'm saying here at all. I just think through though, how do I create this urgency in a way that's authentic, but helps push them toward an action? If I truly believe that my service or my product gets them a really specific outcome very consistently, then I am doing them a favor by giving them the opportunity to buy from me. And I should try to get them to do so as quickly as possible because I'm actually doing them a solid. If you can view your product like that, solves a lot of problems. So why this matters is without urgency, people, even people that are super interested, will procrastinate. They just will. Fake urgency doesn't really work. Sometimes, I guess, but in the long run, definitely doesn't work. But if you have a real believable reason that somebody should take action, usually just based on the outcome that you can get them, you can paint a pretty clear picture of, hey, the longer you wait, you're wasting time or wasting money, or you're hurting this part of your business. There are a few different lenses you can look through, but are there natural ways that you can poke at? You should take action now. And one way to do this is just to be really simple with your call to actions as well. Instead of get started or learn more, which doesn't give me a lot of context, if you just tell people to take action really often on a focused call to action in most sections of your landing page, and it just tells them in the button text exactly what's on the other side of the click. Instead of being vague, just say, download this free thing. That's what's on the other side of this click. That's a lot better CTA. That'll get them to take action a lot better. Or book a one-on-one discovery call. Something like that is better than book call or get started or whatever. But those are some ways that you can create more natural urgency. And I would just think through for your page, what can I do to make it irresistible for them to take action and super simple to do so as well? That's more on the design side and first parts are on the call.
Cool. Great. Okay. I want to get to our next question, but before we do, just a quick side note here. If you're listening to this, I assume it's because you want to get more clients from your content, and I can help you do that. My Clients from Content membership teaches you how to get more clients and sales from your social posts, newsletter, podcast, blog posts, videos, and anywhere else you're publishing content. I've helped more than 500 members use content to earn millions of dollars in revenue. Check it out at joshspector.com/program. Okay, let's get to my next question for you. And we're going to talk about an existing landing page that's working pretty good, but everything could always be improved. And I am going to volunteer to be a guinea pig for this one, which I don't think I've ever actually done on this podcast. We'll see how this goes. We're going to use my Clients from Content membership page as a sort of guinea pig here. We'll take a look at the page. For people that are watching the video version, I'm going to share my screen and pull it up here. This is the page. To be completely honest, again, I don't know I'm guessing you're going to be like, what's it converting at right now? And my answer is going to be, I don't necessarily have a specific exact number for you for a variety of reasons. I know the first thing is I probably should. You can't improve anything that you don't measure. Again, do what I say, not what I do. But what I will say is, it converts pretty well. The people that come here some of them are probably stumbling across it because they found blog posts and they led there, whatever. Most people are coming, they have some familiarity with me. They are coming from my newsletter. They are coming from social content. A lot of them are probably coming from direct message interactions that I've had with them. I would imagine the vast majority of people that are hitting this have some trust of me. They have awareness of what I do. They've gotten value from me before. They're not coming from search. I'm not running paid ads. It's not cold traffic. They have some familiarity. In most cases, they're probably at least curious about what this is and thinking about it. And that's what it is. And I'll scroll through it for people that are looking here, and I'll try to talk through it for people that are listening. So the headline is Turn Your Content into Clients. Actually, before I do this, Blake, how do you want to do this? Should we go section by section? What's the best way to do this?
Yeah, let's go section by section, but I wouldn't mind seeing the whole thing just in a quick scroll
Okay.
through.
So I'll do that first. So basically the headline is there's an image at the top that says clients from content, just a text-based image. Then there's a headline that says turn your content into clients without wasting time on what doesn't work. There's a little intro, which I'll read in a second. Then there are buy buttons for 2 different options. So you can join as a $99 a year member or a $299 a year member. Then there's a little section titled, Is This Your Moment? Which is actually speaks to urgency that we were talking about before. Then I have frequently asked questions with accordions that you can pop open that are telling you what are skill sessions. This is what you get in the membership. What are office hours? Are you worried you won't use it? How will it help you earn money? Will it help you create content? And then there's excerpts in there, and there's some social proof and testimonials in there. And then at the very bottom is, again, 2 more buy buttons. So that in a nutshell is what it is. You want to talk about that, or should I start reading section? How do you want to do it?
No, I'll dive in. So I'll preface this by saying every time I do one of these tear down, roast, audits, whatever you want to call it, there's always going to be some things I recommend that you might have already tried. So just feel free to ignore the stuff that you've already tried or let me know. I'm just going to go based on my gut check. Another caveat here is there is no one way to do a landing page that is unequivocally correct. There are certain best practices I believe in, but this actually reads more like a sales letter, not as long, more like that than a traditional landing page that you would see with a SaaS company or a services company. Yep. So it's a hybrid page. It also looks like a Notion doc with a header. So it's image on top or banner, and then we dive into the text. If I were reworking this page, a couple of things that come to mind right off the bat is probably getting rid of the image in its current constitution, because it just says the name of the thing, which is already
doesn't do anything.
It's already on the sidebar, so they know what page they're on. Plus, you could just reiterate that throughout, and they know what they're buying. So instead, I would bump the text up. I'd make the text headline text bigger, and I'd probably just start off with an explainer video. I didn't see that on the page.
There's no video on here at the moment.
Yeah, so I think off the bat, if you have an explainer video that I don't necessarily want you to go record yourself talking about the page, more so if you have like slides you can put together that make your positioning a little bit clearer. Hey, this is who I serve. These are results that I've gotten for people. These are the kind of people that are awesome in my community. This is what you get. Typical stuff that people just want to know. Just de-risk it all for them, demystify it, make it super clear for them to just see in a 2 to 3 minute video everything that they might want. And then you can reiterate a lot of that on the page. You can have both. It can be a little bit repetitive.
So let me ask you a question about that, because that's interesting. Are you envisioning a video where people see me and see slides and pictures and other stuff? 2 to 3 minutes, me basically explaining what this membership is, who it's for, etc., and having that at the top of the page underneath the headline?
Yeah, you could put it underneath some of this text. My concern with landing on a block of text like this is if it's not an article and people don't come into the page expecting to read a lot, they're just going to skim naturally instead of reading.
Yep.
And even though you have some stuff bolded and there's a little bit of visual breakup here, there's enough text on here where it just reads, it looks more article than it does landing page.
Yep.
And I don't want people to bounce just because of that, even though they should give the page a chance, but they might not just based on the visuals. So if we start with a video, make the header bigger, maybe pare down some of the text here as well. I think that can go a long way in giving the same amount of information in a format that is a little bit easier for a lot of people to consume. Plus, in a 2-minute video, you can convey more text than this entire page contains. So
just a quick question. Is a video something you recommend for just about any landing page?
Not necessarily. Like if we're dealing with a highly technical thing that I think should just be really fleshed out with text, might be different. But I mean, a video
Let
is
me actually rephrase that. So a lot of my audience are coaches, consultants, service business owners, quote unquote creator type. Is it something that, that you recommend for them?
Yeah. I mean, as long as it is not just, again, you reading the landing page, there's not a value in that. Or as long as it's not just freewheeling and unedited. And if it's too long,
if it's well done,
there's no point. But then again, you don't have to have super high production value on the video. Basically, what I would recommend is get on a Loom, have some pre-made slides, like 5 or 6 slides. Just basically tackle what are the questions that I know everybody's going to ask. They're going to ask about price. You can put that at the end if you want. But they're going to ask about that, number one. They're going to ask, what do I actually get? They're going to ask about, if they're the right fit, or what kind of people have gotten results on the inside of it, or whatever it is. These are the questions that just have to get asked, even though they're not super fancy. Those are slides, a slide for each of those, maybe a slide or two to tackle some objections that you might will reject the offering over. And you can confront those right off the bat to maybe mitigate some of that those people bouncing. That'd be a great video here. You can make it a little bit visual. And another part that could flow into the video, but also this page in general, is just more visuals on what's on the other side of this click. When I click $99 a year and I'm going to buy that, what does it look like? Show me the community, show me the coaching, show me the sessions, show me the deliverables, show me whatever you possibly can to actually make it real. Because that's going to, especially on the SaaS side. Now, I know you're not SaaS, but like on the SaaS side, that is 80% of making a decision is just what does it actually look like when I get to use it? And so the SaaS that are winning now are just letting you actually use a trial of the platform.
And it's funny because my attempt, I totally agree with that. My attempt to do that, or what I'm currently doing, is these excerpts so people can see like because what they get when they join the membership is they get these skill sessions, which are hour-long trainings I've done, and they get a monthly office hours call. It's really about access to me. It's not a community in the traditional sense. There's no message board. There's none of that stuff, right? So that's the idea, is this let them, because one of the things I always say is the best way to sell a product is with the product itself. But they're buried down below, and you're saying like, let's bring those up. Let's show people. Let's make it easier for them to see what this thing is that they're getting.
Exactly. I would try to not hide that stuff behind a toggle as much as you can. A lot of these frequently asked questions, if you have a lot of FAQs, it's probably a sign that you didn't put enough into the content of the actual page.
Okay.
If you have 3 or 4 FAQs, okay, we have a lot on this page. These are things that also might be relevant. If you're dealing with 10 FAQs, I mean, that's kind of to me.
Let me ask you a question about that. So originally I didn't forget the word FAQ for a second. I just put that there to label it. This was basically the messaging that I felt like people needed. They need to know what a skill session is. They need to know what office hours are. These are some questions that they have. They need to see some excerpts, that kind of stuff. So originally it was just all one long page. Right.
Yeah.
And I did this to condense it. I don't know if that's good, bad, or otherwise, but just to not have it feel like this sort of massive page. But I don't know, maybe that's a bad idea. And maybe I do feel like a lot of this information is necessary. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But you tell me, would this be better off without these toggles and just a long page with all the info? Or is the problem that I'm trying to convey too much?
I think there are groupings here that I see that would make sense to move into their own sections. So like objections, like the word you won't use it. That's all objection stuff. How will this help me earn more money? You can flip them too. So with objections, just think of it as put quotes around it. This won't help me make money. How is this going to help me make money? That's the concern. That's something you address. There's like a clear grouping there where you can have a section, a grid of different objections. Quote, I'm nervous it's going to not get me this, or I'm scared I'm not getting enough leads. I'm scared AI is putting me out of business. There's all these like objections you can have. And then you have subtext underneath that explains how you tackle that objection. I think that's one that makes sense to bump up. I wouldn't be super concerned about the page being long if I were you, especially because your page is very narrow. So there's actually less content on it than it looks like because of the alignment. I really wouldn't be super nervous about that. With info products or service offerings like this, or membership kind of stuff, anything usually you do want a longer page because people want to know all the nuts and bolts of what they're getting with this kind of stuff. Whereas with the SaaS, you want to break it up into a big hierarchy of different pages. So like you want your features pages. So your homepage have to do all the heavy lifting of having all the info. Whereas here for this offering, you probably just want to do the heavy lifting of everything that goes into this and what's valuable.
Okay. Anything else? Any other thoughts, suggestions?
Yeah, I think up top, like I already brought this up, but just to come full circle, I think there's too much. It's like a letter when we land on it. And I don't think that the writing is wrong. Like I think having a story is a good approach. I would just break it up with headline and true subheader, and then your explainer video. And then you can write what I would call like an open letter toward the problem that you're solving, which I don't know what your core problem is. If it's like,
the core problem is basically this, right? People are spending a lot of time, money, and effort into producing content, and they're not getting as many leads, clients, and sales as they want from it, right? So they join this, and I teach them how to get more leads, clients, and sales out of the content that they're producing. That's basically it.
And I think with that problem, you can create a really convincing story around that. And that's basically what you have here. I would just treat it less like the opening of a blog post is just how it's formatted. So like header, subheader, where the subheader is more pragmatic, the header, each one is a little bit more emotional, like what you have now. And then under that, do your explainer video and then do this open letter that's here is how I see this problem. And here's what the problem is. Try to resonate with them first. And then you'll flip it and say, now this is what I've accomplished and how I can help you make steps to solve that problem. And then you can get into the pricing and
Right.
like what we actually get. If we scroll down as well, so we've got, I guess this is like that. The is this your moment is a little bit open lettery. There's probably just an opportunity to combine some of this. But then under that, again, we've got the different, like what you
Yeah, I
get.
mean, so in what I'm calling frequently asked questions, which is just really a label for that section, whatever. This is really like the sort of nuts and bolts that I think people need to know, right? So what are skill sessions? What are office hours? That's basically a description of what the product is, because this is what it is. To your point, worried you won't use it. How will this help me in money? How will this help me create content? Those are countering objections, basically. How will this help me attract my ideal buyers? How will this help me grow my newsletter? All of that is basically countering objections. Can I see some excerpt? Is show them the product, basically. This is what you're getting. Is there a community message board? Is also maybe defining the product, just making sure people understand that's not what, yes, it's a membership, but that's not what this is. So that probably would get grouped with the what are skill sessions, what are office hours into a sort of this is what the product is and isn't section. And then results is basically your testimonials, social proof. So you're right. I mean, as I look at it now, like there really are some clear sections. It's here's what the product actually is. Here's counters to your objections. Here's examples of the product and here's social testimonials, social proof.
Yeah, for sure. I would move the outcomes up into their own section. There are two ways that I'm thinking through this, but the what you get, we should just make that more clear as well. The current pricing box is one way to do this. So the 99 or 299, you could just flesh that out with more check marks to make it more visual. Like check, you get this specific thing back. And then in the 299 a year, you say check everything from the other one.
The problem is they need a sort of definition of, I mean, again, not that it can't be done, right? But it's like, I need to explain what a skill session is, which is longer than just if people don't know. That's why it's here or hidden. But I'd be curious to hear from you just in general with this page or in general with a page like this, because everyone's going to have kind of those same sections, right? What the product is, the objections, the social proof, the examples. How do you think about what order that should go in? So it's like it's clear from this page, like, okay, there's 5 or 6 sections that I'm going to have. What should the order be?
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to have that typical hero where you want to try to capitalize on somebody that's just instantly ready to buy without having to think.
Yeah.
So always have that just in case they're ready. After that, it seems like there's value in you talking about your problem a little bit. I don't think that people are coming in without a clue. Like you mentioned that you think most people will land on this page, at least know you. And so they're aware of the problem. So we don't have to make the problems, oh, it's really hard to get clients. Like you could be a little more specific with that. But I think there's value in still starting there. Then I would dive into, all right, now we talked about the problem. Let's flip this. I'm solving all this for you. Here's how I approach this. Here's what you get. So I would go into what you get and lay everything out that you need to, probably visualize it in like cards or something like this, just to make it a little more visual. I do worry if it's just text end to end with very few visuals like I see now. It's going to be really hard for people to grasp it and read line by line. But I would tackle what you get. Then I would tackle the objections. I like this balance of, yes, you want to flow. You want everything to flow well, natural. But there's almost something really nice about shifting the, not necessarily shock value, but from one section to another, problem, solution, outcome, pain point again, or
objection.
Like it doesn't have to be perfectly balanced. And people will probably see themselves and resonate more with like pain-driven stuff because that's where they're currently, but they'll make decisions based on the outcome-driven stuff that you do for them. So having a balance of that back and forth is super helpful. Again, there's no perfect structure that just works. But
let me ask you another question, right? So I have right now, I'm just using short kind of 1 or 2 sentence testimonials. If I did 1 or 2, in addition to this, if I did 1 or 2 sort of bigger, longer case studies, whatever that means, whether it was video, whether it was text, whatever it was, How would you work a longer, bigger case study, deeper case study into this? Would you, because I know you don't really, in theory, you don't really want to link off and drive them off this page. Would you just incorporate it into the page? Like if I did a big case study, how would you incorporate it?
It does play back into what I was saying before. Do people need to see a case study to make
Mhm.
this purchase decision, or do they just need very clear, this person is like me and they enjoy this, so I'll buy it too. They got results, I'll buy it too. I don't know if a case study is like necessary to
Right.
embed the whole thing on this page. In this case, if you want to do something like that and you have somebody that's willing to give you a case study, I would be okay linking out to a longer thing, because my gut feeling is most people will just like seeing that you have it,
Right.
but they won't necessarily go and read the whole thing. So you might just create a visual card that looks a little bit different than just a quote, but that's how I'd approach it for this.
Okay. Thank you. Super helpful. Any last thing before we move on to the next question?
No, I visualize it a little bit more,
Yeah.
take some of the snippets from the FAQ and just move them into different sections. I think that could help a ton too.
Cool. Thank you. Super helpful. And I'm sure I have a hunch people are going to love everything you just said in that section. So before we move on to my last question for you, another quick side note, I've got 2 bonus recommendations for everybody that's listening to this. So if you're finding this episode helpful, I wanted to bring up 2 previous episodes I've published that you will also love and find super helpful on these topics. In March 2025, I published an episode titled Selling a Course, Try These Tactics. That episode will show you how to get feedback, improve your course sales page, and surface buyers. For example, at the 9-minute mark of that episode, you'll see how I rewrite a sales page. And at the 27-minute mark, you'll see the email subject line I use to offer a discount to my audience. The second episode for my archives you might want to check out was published in November of 2024 and is titled How to Craft the Perfect Offer. At the 25-minute mark, I reveal how to turn a discovery call into a client. And at the 35-minute mark, I give you 7 key questions to ask yourself when crafting an offer. Links to both of these episodes can be found in the show notes for this episode. All right, we're going to get on to our last question here, which is actually going to be a rapid fire combination of a bunch of questions for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to list a bunch of topics related to landing pages. And for each one, I'd love to have you just give me your single best tip related to that thing. So let's start here. What is your single best landing page headline tip?
You have to immediately address the question, so what? Everything has to answer that question, especially your headline. So from your customer's perspective, a headline can be great in a million different formats. There's no one way to do it. But if you can reliably help your customer understand, so what, like, why does this matter? You're going to hook their attention and get them moving further down the page.
What is your single best landing page design tip?
Not a designer, but I will say more white space. Cramming everything above the fold just kills conversions so fast, faster even than bad copy will. So just give every idea a bit of room to breathe.
Yeah, let it. By the way, good advice for all content, not just landing pages. What is your single landing page copy tip?
I would say write from top of customer mind, not top of your mind. Again, going back to the we or you thing. If you can use customer quotes and testimonials as your actual copy, they'll say it better than you 99% of the time. So just don't overthink it. Just use their actual words if you can.
Right. What is your single best landing page call to action tip?
Just tell me what's on the other side of the click. Don't make it complicated. Don't make it vague.
Okay. What is your single best landing page tip for images?
Literally just show what the product in action actually looks like. Half of product skepticism is basically just coming from a place of the user not knowing what they're getting when they sign up. So if you demystify what the product looks like, you'll actually resolve a ton of their objections.
Let me ask a follow-up on that. How does that apply to someone who, let's say they're a coach, where they're like, my product just looks like me on phone calls with people or Zoom calls with people, right?
Yeah.
How do they reflect that in an image?
Certainly, you should show yourself on Zoom calls and you should have your face all over it. It'll build trust. If you can show yourself in different scenarios, like on stage or on a Zoom call or whatever, that'll build some credibility. But beyond that, are there deliverables that you help people accomplish, even if it's a Google Doc? Can you show some of that and just redact some of the personal information? Can you show results or things that you've accomplished with somebody? If you're a web designer, something you've worked on with people, there are a lot of ways you can get creative about visualizing. But if you do only text, you're not going to give all that context on what the flip side of the engagement looks like.
What is your single best landing page tip for an email sign up on a landing page?
For email,
Actually, hold on. Let me rephrase that. What's your single best tip for a landing page whose goal is to get people to join an email list?
Yeah, just try to focus on promising them one specific thing they're going to learn. Get tips is a little bit vague, feels like it's going to be work for me. So it's probably not going to work as better as something like, as well as something like, this is the exact email that got me 40% plus reply rates every time, or 50% reply rates plus. That's more concrete. And it's one thing that I'm going to learn from that email. So it's a little bit more compelling.
Cool. What is your single best tip for a landing page that is going to be primarily getting cold traffic?
Yeah, with cold traffic, you'll probably have to assume some education is going to be required at the front end, like we talked about. So spend twice as much space on the problem as the solution on the page. They don't really know you exist yet. They barely probably know they have a problem because they're just entertaining this, hopefully, from your email or wherever you're reaching out from. So your job's not really to sell the product yet. It's to help them realize why their current situation is not working. And then once they feel that tension, they might be pushed toward wanting to hear about the solution a little bit more.
What is your single best tip for testing a landing page?
Yeah. Don't test button colors. It doesn't matter. Just test bigger ideas, strategic ideas that kind of shift stuff. So these could be shifts in the business model, could be shifts like big things like this, things that will save time or save money for the customer. It's worth testing the bigger things. If you're only worried about button colors and text alignment and small things like that, you're never actually going to see really any meaningful A/B test results. And yeah,
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of, I may have mentioned this before, but I remember somebody saying that with every test, you should just test different emotions. That like in terms of a big, so if one is, my goal here is to make people feel inspired or motivated, then maybe your next test is to make them feel afraid or what, that like, that if you just choose a different emotion, it will by default lead you to have a big enough sort of differential in terms of your test, to your point that it's not just, oh, I switched a color or switched a font or whatever. And then the last thing here, just a wild card. What's one more tip you want to give me about anything related to landing pages that we haven't mentioned, haven't talked about? One final tip to leave people with?
yeah. People don't usually buy the best thing. They buy the thing that feels the least risky to them. So instead of focusing your copywriting and everything on how amazing your product is and constantly throughout your page talking about yourself and designing the most amazing transitions and animations and stuff, that can be really cool. And there's a place for that, but you're usually better off just getting inside the head of the customer, figuring out what makes them scared about their current problem, and then try to reverse engineer how you solve that for them and make that really clear. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Just try to make this feel very and like you genuinely are trustworthy, and you'll usually do pretty well.
Yeah, I love that. That's right in line with another thing I tell people a lot of times when it comes to sales copy, and it's just remove the reasons they might say no. Don't worry about, as opposed to trying to be like, I'm going to convince them to say yes. It's just think about all the reasons they might say no and counter those reasons, and it'll make yes the obvious choice. Blake, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Let people know where they can find you. And by the way, you just gave me a mini version of your page teardowns. Please talk about that. And I know you offer those as well to people. So anyone who's seeing this can actually hire you to have you do much what I'm sure is a more in-depth version of the mini one that you gave me. So let people know where they can find you and connect with you.
Yeah, I do copywriting for SaaS and agencies, sometimes creators as well. That's where I spend most of my time. I'm at pagetear.com. So if you want full scale help with copywriting and content, I can help there. Or if you just want an audit, I also do that as well. Best way to reach out, honestly, is just DM me on Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever you are, and I'll respond to you and we can work out whatever you need, and I'll be happy to help. And at the very least, reach out and I'll give you some free advice.
Cool. Thanks again. Thanks everyone for watching and listening. Quick reminder, my newsletter you can get at fortheinterested.com/subscribe. My membership, joshspector.com/program. I'm also active on LinkedIn, and by now, the episode's over. So you guys have already logged off and gone off to listen to whatever podcast you're listening to next. Thanks everyone for your interest, and I will see you next time. Thanks again, Blake.